Okay, I'd now like to invite up onto stage Alfaseeh, who's the co-founder and COO of ShowSuite, and what they're doing is attacking the issue and creating an opportunity in Singapore's developer segment. And we're going to find out about how the PropTech revolution is really transforming sales and marketing in Singaporean market. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. Right, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of ShowSuite. So today I'm here to share with you my experience and ShowSuite's experience, right, in Singapore and what we are doing, right. So to start off with, I'll talk a little bit about what is ShowSuite, right. So we're a digital real estate transaction platform, right. So what we do is we put the developer at the heart, right in the center, right, and we look at how we can connect agents, how we can connect the lawyers and all the other players in the ecosystem together on one unified platform. And you'll see along the way as I share with you my experience why we ended up here doing what we're doing, right. Now, just a little bit about the market adoption, right. So up to date, we've transacted about $13 billion worth of property on the platform. We have more than 8,000 agents who are registered and regular users of the platform. And that's about 50% or so of the new homes transactions, right, that are happening in Singapore, right? So that's where we stand. So a little bit about where we are positioning ourselves and what we're doing. So pretty much, you have property portals that have been out there, right? So we do not want to be in that space. That's not where we are. That's the B2C space, right? And then you've got the real estate agencies on the other spectrum, right, who are operating a lot of manpower, right? And where we are is right in the middle, trying to bridge these two persons together, right? So we're a pure transaction platform, right? So we stay in the background. We work with everybody, but we stay in the background. Now, I know there are some agencies in Singapore as well, like Oh My Home and PropSeller, who are trying to cross between these two lines, right? But for us, it's about staying in the middle, right? Now, I'll go a little bit about, the Singapore property market, just an overview of it, right? So this is the graph, this is from the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Singapore, and it will show you, how property prices have moved, right? So this is from 1975 all the way to 2023. I think this is what VCs would love to see in a startup company, right? A nice big curve going up. And that's how the property market has been going up in Singapore. And primarily because the rising values is due to land scarcity, right? There was a joke last night, somebody was saying that, if Singapore invades Malaysia, we'll have more land. And I don't think that's our intention. We've tried reclaiming land, but this is always going to be a constant problem for Singapore, right? And then, if you look at it, the other interesting fact is only 28.4% of the market is private property, right? And for the last 15 years, if you look at it, it has almost been a constant average of about 10,000 homes or so that are being transacted. Some years a little bit lower, some years a little bit higher. In no year it exceeds 15,000 new homes that have been transacted in a year. And how did this happen? This really happens because the government has a good control on the land supply. Right, so the government controls that, how much land they release in a year that, the private developers can buy. And at the same time, what happens is, some of the developers do redevelop existing properties as well. So that's the other way, how the private property gets in the market. But even so, it's only 28.4%. The biggest landlord in Singapore is actually the Housing Development Board, who builds public housing for the majority of Singaporeans, right? But that said, then the average price of a private property is about $1.5 million, right? And that's where it stands right now, right? So it is a very high value market, right? So this gives you a bit of an idea about what the Singapore market is all about and, where we are. Now, let's talk about what it was before, the adoption of technology and, other things there. So this was the kind of chaos that was out there, right? So basically, it's a very, messy. There's agencies, there's developers, then there's buyers everywhere, It was a very messy landscape. And why was it like that? Because at the end of the day, they were all trying to compete, right? It was a messy market. Everybody had their own systems or own workflows and stuff like that, right? Now, the funny thing is, what we ended up looking at is, most of the, developers were using Excel sheets, right? They were looking at, simple, very manual processes. And, for me, I do not come from the real estate background, right? So I started off in the digital space, building, technology, apps, and software. And to come into the real estate vertical and look at this, it was a bit of an eye shocker, right? How traditional and conservative the real estate industry pretty much has been, and still is in some extent. So how did this transform, right? Now, before we go into that real part, let's look at who are the key stakeholders for, in the landscape here. So we've got property developers, sales agents, and lawyers. Pretty much, they do most of the work. Of course, you've got the home buyers there as well, right? Now, the key problem here is, then let's look at the property developers. They're looking at manual processes, right? A lot of times, having accounting software, basic accounting software, or having inventory through Excel sheets. And then you've got no real-time information in that aspect, right? There's a lot of heavy reliance on paperwork and a lot of processes out there. And one key major thing that we've learned in the market is that not everyone in one group actually has the same role, right? So that's the other big key thing that we had to tackle, or we had to look at, and when the industry wanted to transform itself, was all about who is doing what within the developer itself. So you've got people who are in sales, people who are administrators, people who are in finance, and then you've got other in-between roles depending on the size of the developer, and there was no one-size-fits-all, right? So that was one of the key problems with every department, especially the bigger companies. Every department wanted to do their own stuff, right? So that was part of the chaos as well that was going out there. And the agents then, right, who are trying to sell the property, then gets messed up as well, because first they do not have the right information, right? A lot of times they have to go back to the show flats, they have to move around, and then there's a lot of manual filling up processes, right? So even if you use, DocuSign or other accounting or other platforms, each agency then had their own little software or their own things that they were using. So it was always very confusing for different agents as well. And even amongst the agents, there was always different roles and different processes, right? There were team leaders, there was a hierarchy that they were following. So this presented to us an opportunity for a neutral platform, right? So what we realized was, if we came in and found the gap in the space where providing a neutral platform that everyone could use, the same platform, and the important thing was to actually bring about familiarity, right? It's like driving a car. If you have a license, you can drive any make and any model anywhere you would want to, and you would be pretty much okay with it. Sure, the first time you touch a new car, you might be a little bit nervous. You wouldn't want to scratch it. You might be finding your way about the size of the vehicle, but that's about it. You know how to drive it. And that was where we're trying to drive at, to give an agent, right, an opportunity to transact anywhere with the same kind of software. Same goes for the property developers as well, because then they're in charge, they take control of the inventory, they know what's going on at any point in time, right, and they can do the entire property sales management as well within the platform. So how's the landscape right now, right? So what we're looking at is, again, Singapore's very unique, right? In one weekend, you can end up selling out or about 60, 70%, and in the launch that we just had last weekend before coming here, it was 93% sold in one weekend, right? So that's how crazy. There's still a lot of pent-up demand in Singapore, right? So this is a sample of the show flats being absolutely crowded, right, for the first 2 opening weekends where they're collecting interest. So what do the developers do over there? So what they do is they come up with all the usual technology products that are out there, right? So you've got 360 virtual tours, you've got virtual realities, augmented reality, there's a lot of videos they like to produce, right? Big screens at the show flat, there are a lot of AI chatbots, and I think all the different marketing channels out there, which are all the other portals offer, everyone uses them, right? And it is being really utilized well, primarily also because Singapore's commissions, due to the high value of property, the commission payout is decent, that it also incentivizes the agents to put in a lot of their own money to market the projects as well, right? So, but there were key things that, affected the market and where the mindset actually shifted a lot. So, one of the things to look at was 5 years ago was COVID, right? I think this was a big mindset shift for property developers over there when they realized that all these crowds, I mean, thankfully the crowds are back, but they realized that they couldn't actually get a lot of people at the show flat. They couldn't interact with one another. They couldn't do things in the very traditional way. And I think this had a huge impact on the industry at that point, right, for a lot of mindset shift, right? Now, lawyers also played a big role in this thing. So our integration with lawyers helped a lot because they helped with a lot of legislative process. And I think one of the things for property developers is they're always afraid about, treading legal lines and, making sure that whatever process they're doing is kosher and it's clear that, there's no problem with it, right? And another big shift in Singapore being, a super highly regulated market is that we have this KYC process for anti-money laundering, right? And now every single buyer needs to go through, so every single interest that the agents collect, they would actually need to go through this KYC process, right? And then the developer would also need to do this process again. So this makes the whole home buying experience very, very tedious. And, so the importance and the need for integrating all of this into a workflow was really there, right? So that's what, ShowSuite did, right? So we actually integrated the entire workflow and end-to-end, right, where, all this KYC, processes, documents, and everything is integrated on one platform. So it makes it easy for anyone or any agent to pick up and go, or whether it's an agent or even an in-house sales team. So I was talking about the weekends and the launches. This was just the one of the last projects for last year in 2024. 615 homes sold in one day, right? In one single Saturday, that was what was sold. More than $1 billion of sales, right, in that one day, with 5 different agencies participating, and with more than 2,800 interests, right, that were collected, and then that was converted to 615 sales eventually, and it was a 900-unit project, right? So basically, looking at this whole space that selling new homes is basically a staple job for property developers, right? Something they have to do is worth a lot of money, right? And at the end of the day, there is a lot of demand anywhere in the world, right? Especially in Singapore, where people want to own homes, right? And there's also population growth to look at. So what we've realized is if you can free up and make the whole entire process much more efficient, right? If you can give agents a lot more time, right, where they are able to now focus on the selling, right, then they would actually be able to do a lot more and look at properties across as well and across different borders, right? So cross-border sales now becomes an opportunity, right? And that's something that, now developers and others from outside of Singapore are also looking at it and saying, hey, if we have access to information, if all this information is out there, the agents are able to have it all under one platform, and by using the network of people who are out there, and because they don't have to learn how to use the software, do the process, it makes it a lot easier and it's much more scalable for them to try this again and again, right? And to sell properties from all across Southeast Asia, Australia, and whatnot, right? So I had to bring in this AI topic and just didn't want to feel left out, right? But no, so the future is, there is some room in AI, right, where, there are a lot of things like leads and inquiries and things like that can go. And we are also studying AI for especially automation in documentation, right? Definitely we think these things can help, right? And to be able to provide a lot of seamless local information. So one of the best things about AI is because it can write a lot of good descriptions and stuff like that, and that can create and populate the right information for the agents, right? But I would like to sort of end on a note here that the most important thing here is to build relationships, right? Because at the end of the day, you can have all the technology out there and all of that, but maintaining the relationships on the ground with the agents, with the stakeholders, with the property developers and the lawyers is what is most important, right? So thank you for your time, right?
Thank you very much. Oh, I've got a question. Okay, so let's start off with this one. Are you sort of an intelligent CRM for developers, which also connects with agents? What's your revenue model?
Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, we're not a CRM. We're actually a workflow, right? Sort of like an ERP software, right? That connects from end to end. But we have that entire front end for agents and developers to interact with, right? And at the end of the day, our revenue model is we charge the property developers. The developers pay an upfront fee, and then they pay a transaction for every unit that's being transacted out there, right?
Okay, and the revenue model in detail, how much are they charging? How much does it cost?
Well, it goes by a very small percentage, like 0.1, 0.2% of every transaction. That's all we're looking at, right?
Okay,
it's
and
a very modest amount.
Right, and how do you ensure you get paid?
The developer pays us. So the system actually tracks every sale, and as every sale is being tracked, we know, and then we bill the developer for that.
Right, so the developer pays you, and then you pay onwards?
No, we don't. I mean, the
you're
developer
a
pays us, the developer pays the agents a commission,
Right.
and so we don't touch the commission from the agents,
So
right?
it's the same model as Ricardo has with his Iris product that we were talking about yesterday.
That's right.
Where you're basically, so right, so this is sort of, now I'm getting it 100%, this is like Iris, but in Singapore.
That's right. Yeah, we had the
Excellent.
conversation last night, and we were saying how similar we are from two different parts of the world.
Yeah, and you just literally came together and found that the same solution is a clearinghouse for information, knowledge, and data, and making the transaction as smooth as possible. Do you only operate in Singapore and do transaction platform? Because you can work in many markets.
Absolutely, and so we've done some pilots in Thailand, right? So we've been really trying and localizing the product for Thailand. We already have Thai language as well. We have some work going on in Australia right now, and we're definitely looking at Malaysia and Indonesia as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have been the biggest challenges in building out this business model? There must have been it's not like build it and hey, it works and everyone loves it. What have been the one or two hurdles that have been the hardest to jump over?
Oh, I can take 2 hours just to explain that.
Okay.
No,
try 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the biggest hurdles is change management, right? So it's just like getting somebody to move over from iOS, right, to Android, right? And they're just stuck with mindsets, right? So you end up with property developers and agents being fanboys of their own systems, their own workflow processes. And I think convincing them to make the shift and why it's good for them, and providing the kind of support at the very start. Because when they're resistant to any change, they tend to find a lot of problems with everything, right? And I think then providing the support and service was really some of the biggest challenges we had.
Okay. Yeah. And last question is, what problems are you looking to solve for the developers in the future? I.e., where are you going with the business?
Sure. So I think one of the things we could do is really to integrate more, right? Integrate with more services, the banking services, to integrate with other third-party services. We're trying to work out with furniture vendors, right, who can provide that last mile, because when the house is ready, it's not a home yet. There are things that people need to put into the home to make it a home, and those are the little things that we're trying to connect with various partners. And I think having timely information, because everything is systemized and it's digital, we have that opportunity to do so, and those are the things we're exploring right now.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. I like what you guys are doing, and I like this. It's super interesting. I hadn't really, because I know what Iris is doing, and I'd sort of read what you're doing, and I hadn't connected the two. And I realized that you're doing what's fundamentally an important role, which is that clearinghouse, of both systems and the product, and making it easier for the industry to access the stock, and for the industry, the agents, etc., to then transact through and deal with the developers in the process.
Absolutely.
So, well done.
Thank you
very
very
much,
much.
and thank you for sharing the journey.
Appreciate
Excellent.
it. All right, thank you. Cheers.